There is a lot of talk today about this thing called accompaniment. I'm not too sure what all this pastoral approach of accompaniment actually means, because no one really defines it. I'm working my way through that document on the preparation for the synod, and it talks a lot about journeying and walking together and accompaniment. And my goodness, if I read the word journey one more time, it's got to be the most used word. I see the word journey show up more than the word Jesus, and I'm 10 pages in, and I actually don't think I've seen the name Jesus yet. Maybe I've just missed it, because I'm constantly reading the word journey and walking together and listening. And those are all good things: journeying, listening, walking together. However, where are you walking to, where are you journeying to, and what are you listening to? These are important things, you know. So I've tried to be discerning, what does this mean, this accompaniment? And I don't know what they mean by it, because there's no clarity to what that means. What does it mean to accompany somebody who perhaps might be in an illicit marriage because they don't have an annulment and they're in a second marriage? Or how do we accompany somebody who may be involved in a homosexual relationship, or union, as they try to call it, if there's such a thing? Or how do I accompany somebody, whatever, who are trapped in these lives of sin? What does it mean to accompany them? Well, pastorally speaking, I think I go back to the words that my moral theology professor gave us when preparing us for the sacrament of confession. He said, if someone comes to confession, you have their soul in your hand. If you're too hard, you could crush them. If you're too weak, you could drop them into hell. Right? And so you can either destroy somebody, or you can confirm somebody in their sin. Right? Both are dangerous to that soul. Recently I was reading an article by Liam Nielsen, the actor Nielsen. He was a very famous actor and so forth. And he said that he was a very, very, very devout Catholic. Went to Mass all the time, almost every day, served Mass every Sunday. And at 15 he went to confession. And he confessed a sin. He said the priest was so harsh with him and so cruel that he never went to confession again, because he was so embarrassed, and it really ruined his faith. And he still considers himself a prayerful man. He still loves God and so forth, but he just can't go back to the sacrament after that, because now he needs to grow out of that. There's a way to accompany him back to the faith and back to the sacraments, but that being too strong destroyed his faith. I know another person, you know, she went to confession and she confessed abortion, and the priest said, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's not that bad." And she said, "It's not that bad, killing my child?" Like, you know, she had the wherewithal to speak back up about it, but the way he was trying to be pastoral, but in his pastoral approach, he was degrading the seriousness of her sin. And thanks be to God, she had the ability to respond in a very strong way, because she recognized the seriousness of it. But that kind of gentleness in that type of situation could have led her to say, "Oh, it's okay if I go and have another one." Right? So we have to be careful that each person who comes to us, whether it's in the sacrament of confession or it's a friend who comes, that we take each person where they're at and who they are in order to accompany them out of the sin into a life of grace and virtue. There was one time I was out at a big pro-marriage rally, and we were being protested by the homosexual community and the gays and so forth. And afterwards there was two young people, we were doing news interviews, and these two young people kept walking around with signs past us, and they were really trying to be interrupting the conversations with the news crews. So I went over to them and I said, "Are you okay?" And they said, "We're fine." I said, "No, you know, the lifestyle leave is very difficult." And they said, "Every lifestyle is difficult." Well, you know the choices that it is and how it goes on, and I worked enough in with the homosexual community in Philadelphia to know what really goes on in that community, in that lifestyle, and I began to share with them what I knew, and they began to cry, and we had a beautiful conversation, and then I encouraged them to go to the group Courage, which helps people who have same-sex attraction to live good, holy Catholic lives, right? You approach them where they're at. Some people may come and say, you know, like sometimes you might hear in confession, "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned, I'm an alcoholic." And I say, "No, you're a son of God with an alcohol addiction." And then we talk about the addiction, but you also talk about their dignity as a child of God. What is the goal of accompaniment? The goal of accompaniment, if it's true accompaniment, is to take this person from where they're at, to understand their heart, so there is a part of listening to find out what's really happening there, and then to walk them from that into the fullness of truth, to accept their dignity as a son or daughter of God, to receive the mercy of God, right? To find forgiveness in His mercy, particularly through the sacraments, and then to begin to live a sacramental life. I should be accompanying them into holiness of life, right? We should be accompanying them into the will of God, right? We should be accompanying them out of immorality into morality. This should be the true way. Now, I don't, like as I said, all these words of accompaniment, it seems to go along with perhaps just simply confirming people in their sin, and that's not accompaniment. You see, there's a certain ministry that's done by Father James Martin, where when you read his books and you listen to him, it doesn't sound like he's actually accompanying people out of that lifestyle to live truly holy lives of chastity and so forth and healing, because these people are engaged in sins that are contrary to both the moral law and the natural law. And so it would be truly unjust, unfair, it would be a very act of real meanness to leave them in that. Right? True love would accompany them into the fullness of truth. And so when Father James Martin speaks about accompaniment, and he's engaged in confirming people in their homosexual relationships, unions and so forth, what he's doing is confirming them in their sin, and he's not loving them, he's not caring about them, he's not accompanying them, he's actually helping them lead to greater self-destruction. I was recently, not long ago, talking to the director of the Courage group. Courage is a beautiful Catholic group founded by Father John got his name now, just got it in my head. A wonderful fellow, brother priest, gave us a conference when we were in seminary. And so he talked about how you, when you were dealing with the homosexual person and so forth, that they can actually come to healing from it. And his whole process was to help people who are in this lifestyle to live lives of holiness and virtue and chastity, to support each other living in chastity and so forth, and even come to healing from it. I know people who lived in the homosexual lifestyle and so forth and were healed of it when they came and actually dealt with the issues that were there. And they grew from it beautifully. A friend of mine was telling me one day she was at Mass and she had lived in a horrible lifestyle for many years, in the lesbian lifestyle, and she was in Courage and so forth, and actually started a chapter of Courage, and she was at Mass and she was looking at this fella and she was feeling all kinds of things for him, and she was, oh, this is terrible. She was, no, this is good, because she realized that she had been healed of all of that through the grace of God, and she was now able to live a regular natural life of a natural attraction that was actually healthy and holy before God. Right? So in talking with them, the director of that program, he spoke about how many of these people who go into transgender and get these surgeries, who in their late 20s have such horrible regret and their lives fall apart and so forth, and it's destructive to them. The suicide rate is absolutely astronomical. And he was saying how it really is. They just wish they could undo everything they've done, and it's really terrible when they finally get into their late 20s, early 30s. And they regret all of that because everything that they're doing in this transgender is contrary to their own physical nature. It's contrary to science. And we know that Mother Nature does take revenge, in the sense that you can only work against nature for so long before nature wins, right? And so the nature, the science is there, and so you're fighting against the science of your body for those years, and eventually science wins in the end with it. And so you have to accompany somebody into transgender, just be accepting as they are and confirm them in that, tell them they're wonderful and they're good, and then never encourage them not to go any further and to turn back, would be not nice. It wouldn't be loving. It wouldn't be kind. It wouldn't be gentle. It wouldn't be generosity. It would be contrary to that person. Right? So we speak about accompaniment. We need to be speaking about accompanying them towards the will of God. Right? We just don't journey into nowhere. We certainly just want to journey with somebody on a path to hell. We want to journey with them towards God and to the truth of God, to the fullness of God. And that takes great pastoral sensitivity, and it's important for us in engaging somebody one-on-one, and particularly when they're in that type of situation, is to pray to the Holy Spirit at that moment. I've often seen this where people, who are overzealous will go to somebody who perhaps is trapped in a life of sin or whatever, and they start just telling the person the truth. Boom, 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 boom. And they're saying all these things which are true and right, but that's not the person's problem. And they're not getting to the actual issues to why that person is in that lifestyle. That's where I think listening is important, because you need to listen and to hear the person to what led them into that lifestyle, and then you get to that, and that which needs to be healed and addressed. Right? For example, if I'm talking to Liam Nielsen, and he's telling me he doesn't go to church anymore and so forth, and I start telling him all the truths of the Catholic faith, he would probably just go, yeah. And then if I don't ever ask the question, why did you leave the church? And he says, well, by the way, a priest treated me when I was 15 years old, and then explains it, then I'm able to, here's the reason why he's not going to church. It's not because he doesn't believe in the Eucharist and so forth, maybe he does, I don't know. But it's not all those things that I want to tell him. It's because he was treated terribly as a child, and that needs to be healed. And from there I would apologize on the behalf of that priest if I was speaking to him. And I would tell him he didn't have a right to be treated like that. He didn't have a right to be treated with dignity and respect. Not that the priest was saying he was wrong about the sin, but the way he addressed it was terrible. And he needs an apology in order to come to healing from that. Right? So sometimes when we're dealing with people who are outside the church, it takes, or left the church, it's the pastoral approach to find out why, and then to hear the why, then address the why, and accompany them into the fullness of truth. So I hope that's what the synod means. Reading 10 pages of what I would just call gobbledygook, theological gobbledygook, I don't know if that's what they mean, because I can't figure out what they mean. It looks like it's just a lot of sensitivity sessions. Not only does the word journey show up a lot, but the word feelings show up a lot too. It's all about feelings. As I'm reading the document, all I kept hearing was the song man, feelings, nothing more than feelings, right? So during the synod, I guess someone's going to get up and share their feelings, and you can't give your opinion about the person's feelings. You got to sit back and think, okay, what are my feelings about what this person just shared about their feelings, that I get to share my feelings about their feelings. I don't know, that's what step 1, 2, and 3 were in this, that I've read so far. So I don't know, but it's more than feelings. It's far more than feelings when it comes to accompanying someone to the truth. I hope that's where the synod's going to go with it, to be able to say, how do we accompany people in these particular lifestyles and so forth, who have been hurt or wounded and so forth? How do we accompany them to healing? How do we accompany them to Christ? How do we accompany them into the fullness of truth? How do we accompany the Muslims, the Buddhists, and non-Christians into the waters of baptism, so that they can enter the fullness of life? How do we accompany the Protestant churches back into the fullness of truth, to receive the fullness of truth and to become one with the church again? Right? By accepting, how do we get them to accept all the full truths of the faith so that the church might be one as Christ prayed? How do we accompany the East and Western church back together so that the two lungs of the church are breathing together again? How do we accompany fallen away Catholics back to the sacrament of confession to practice their faith again? Because that is the goal, I would think, of accompaniment, is to accompany all into the one flock of Jesus Christ, to the embracement of the fullness of the truth of Jesus Christ, and into the mercy and healing power of God, to a full sacramental life, as full Catholics believing the fullness of the deposit of faith. I think that's what accompaniment really means. I think that's to be the goal of what we're heading for. So I just encourage you to really pray, and when you encounter somebody or persons who are struggled in different lifestyles and difficulties and struggles and caught up in various things that lead them outside the church, or people outside the church, I just encourage you to really pray to the Holy Spirit at that moment for the proper pastoral approach necessary to be able to bring this person into the fullness of the life of God in the church. Because that is the greatest good we can do for them. The greatest act of love we can do for them is to bring them to the fullness of the love and mercy of God, in the full deposit of faith, in the fullness of our Catholic faith. So may the Holy Spirit lead us this day into that great way of accompanying souls into the fullness of the life of God within the church. May God bless you and may Mary keep you.